You can now get a 30-day trial to experience The Athletic for free. Visit the link in the description below to try it now. A growing trend has been developing in Italy, with the number of clubs owned or controlled by North American investors steadily on the rise. Today, Roma, AC Milan, Fiorentina, Parma, Spezia, Bologna, and Venezia are all under American or Canadian control, more than a quarter of the league clubs. But why? What does this pattern of investment represent? 2011 was the beginning of a new mini-era of sorts in Serie A. In August, a consortium of American investors purchased a 67% stake in Roma for just over €70 million. The deal, which saw the Sensi family relinquish their control over the club, was necessary, but accepted grudgingly. In response to the takeover, then president of the Italian Football Federation, Giancarlo Abeti, said that it makes us sad, as I'd love for all the legendary families who made Italian football great to remain in charge of their teams. Now in 2012, James Pallotta, one of the original investors and a Boston American with Italian parents, bought a controlling stake, becoming the only foreign owner in the league. I think Roma is the most undervalued sports team and brand in the world, Pallotta said, on becoming president, citing the city's thousands of years of history, its millions of tourists each year, and the club's footballing heritage. And it was a fair theory. In 2013, Roma signed a 10-year kit deal with US giant Nike. The year before, in another brand-building move, they'd reached agreement with Disney to spend winter training camps at the company's resort in Florida. In 2020, however, Pallotta's ownership would end in acrimony, frustration, and heavy loss, and he would sell his shares for around €199 million, but to more Americans, the Texas-based conglomerate the Friedkin Group. And in the present day, they have plenty of company. In 2014, Canadian Joey Saputo was part of a group that acquired Bologna. In 2018, AC Milan fell into the hands of Elliott Management Group after previous owner Lee Yong-hon defaulted on loan repayments to the hedge fund. Then in 2019, the Italian-born billionaire Rocco Commisso, founder of Mediacom, took control of Fiorentina. A year later, in September 2020, Kyle Kraus purchased 90% of Parma for under €100 million, and on completion, Kraus, who also has Italian ancestry, revealed that he'd been looking into buying a Serie A club for some time, referencing the competition's potential. It used to be the number one league in the world, and there's no reason that it cannot get back to that or close to it. Robert Platek, who bought Spezia outright for €25 million, also spoke of a specific desire to invest in Italian football. Serie A football is in an elite class of its own, he said in February 2021. That same year, another American was promoted into the league, Duncan Niederauer with Venezia. Niederauer is a former CEO of the New York Stock Exchange and preaches fiscal responsibility, proper budgets, and a lack of ego, casting him in a different light to some of the characters that have and continue to populate Italian football. And of course, Serie A continues to have its quirks. Juventus are actually the only club to own their stadium, with most teams playing in grounds leased from local authorities, most of which haven't been refurbished since the 1990 World Cup and which provide only modest matchday income. Serie A's broadcast contract is also only the fourth most valuable in Europe. The current deal is valued at £788 million per season, behind the Bundesliga's £1.1 billion, La Liga's £1.14 billion, and the Premier League's £1.67 billion per season contracts respectively. For buyers, it creates an obvious advantage. Serie A ownership is available at a relatively cheap price. In a 2021 Forbes list of the world's most valuable clubs, no Italian side featured in the top 10, and Juventus ranked 11th, were the only one to have a valuation in excess of $1 billion. Even AC Milan and Roma, one a multiple Champions League winner and the other a regular participant, were sandwiched between Everton and West Ham, neither of whom have ever taken part in the group stage. So it describes a league of underappreciated assets, but it's also a competition with 4 Champions League places set in a country dominated by a single sport. As an investment opportunity, it's also far more affordable than anything at the top level of traditional American sports or even in MLS, where the entrance fees run into the hundreds of millions, and in 2019, the Chicago Fire was sold for $320 million. Many Americans also feel an ancestral attachment to Italy, and it's one of the symbolic homes of the sport at a time when football is growing in the United States and when the country is just a few years from hosting its second World Cup. Serie A is full of cautionary tales, certainly, But there's a logic to the gamble, and an apparent consensus for how to approach it. In March, Parma announced plans for an extensive renovation of the Ennio Tardini Stadium. In May 2021, Robert Platek Spezia appointed architects to lead a 3-year redevelopment of the Alberto Pico Stadium. And in the same month, Bologna unveiled €100 million plans for their Stadio Renato Dall'Ara's renovation. A new San Siro project is also underway. So step one for these owners is to make money from the stadiums, and if possible, on more than just match days. Rocco Commisso has long since desired a new ground for Fiorentina, but his attempts to create a new sporting centre, Viola Park, have been frustrated to the extent that he's now looking to sell the club. James Pallotta's efforts to move Roma from the cavernous Stadio Olimpico to a new 60,000-seater arena were also beset by difficulties, and the project's failure was one of the factors behind his own decision to sell. Pallotta is gone, but his early years at Roma still seem to capture the spirit of this investment. In an interview with Sports Illustrated in 2013, he attributed Serie A's decline to a failure to keep up with the times, in effect, not keeping up with what's going on in sports. Unless you get into the 21st century in terms of a stadium, social media, branding, and sponsorships, he said, you're never going to compete at those top levels. And that characterises the challenge facing this second wave of investors, and the gamble that they appear to be taking. Can they impact and alter a culture which is very resistant to change? If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. There are journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.